special edition of the CK podcast on this beautiful Thursday morning. I think this is the earliest podcast I've ever done on this platform, Ty. Thank you so much for making some time, joining the show. What are we going to talk about today, brother?
No problem, man.
Oh,
So today,
oh, there's a call. Decline. Go ahead.
no worries. So basically, today we're going to be going over recent NBA news that's been going on in the off season. I know a lot of debates been going on about next season's start time for the NBA. Just a lot of teams' movements, coaching hires, and things like that. So there's been a lot of things going on around the league. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to let us talk about it. And so I think the first thing that we're going to talk about today, and I think that it's kind of been a big discussion with the NBA bubble going on, is do you think that the Lakers title should become with an asterisk, considering that Pat Riley believes that because of the bubble and because of the Miami Heat injuries, it was kind of like an unfair ring. What are your thoughts on that?
That's tough. I've always been on this is going to be the toughest championship ever, but because I hate the Lakers, I was like, nah. They
Yeah.
had it all they had it all go well for them. No, I'm joking. I believe that this is one of the toughest, if not the toughest, because of all the circumstances. Now, if you look at it from LeBron's perspective on how he got a 4 month break, then yes, he got a 4 month break and his body got to rest rather than go from March to June. But at the same time, it's not easy to restart your body just like that. And I feel like a lot of the athletes had to do that with the NBA bubble. And those were one of the big concerns from the doctor that I had on my show, Dr. Z, that because you have such a layover, some guys would get hurt. He wasn't worried about the the virus itself, but he was more worried about the injuries that could potentially happen. And thankfully, we didn't see much of it or any of it, honestly. It was nice to not see an injury derail a series like we thought it potentially could. We didn't see that, and I just really enjoyed the bubble. I thought they did a great job. Yeah, if people listen to my Rashawn Holmes interview, which I released on iTunes only, the video will release tomorrow at noon. But he was very impressed with how the NBA went about it. I was very impressed, and I think collectively, both you and I can agree that it was the best thing that could have happened to the NBA coming back and crowning an NBA champion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think at the end of the day, when you look at it, NBA fans, we were crawling and hoping that we can get some NBA action back, and just to see it even after 4 months, zero positive COVID cases, just to see that the way that the NBA carried themselves so professionally. And I think if you kind of just look at the NBA bubble kind of as just like in most simple terms, just basketball, right? At the end of the day, while people want to
Hmm.
complain and say there wasn't any travel, there wasn't any fans, I feel like it evened the playing field. Everybody's playing on the same court. So I think what it really comes down to is, you versus me, and let's see who better basketball player is. I think there's a lot of different factors that come in when you're playing during the regular season, whether it's injuries or whether, just a bunch of different things. And so I think at the end of the day, while people, we even talked about more on multiple occasions the Los Angeles Clippers, right? And we kind of got to see their downfall with everything going on off the court. So I think, and I hate to say it coming from a Kings perspective, but for the Lakers to be able to go into that bubble and get the job done and let all the outside noise out of there, and it just goes to show what great of a team that was, what great of a roster it was, and how they've been able to build that organization back and return into like championship contention. So
Yeah, that
that
was
was,
pretty impressive. That was really impressive. And obviously, we can make every excuse in the world for the Clippers, right? How everything went bad, how they didn't play all year. They had 1,000 different lineups throughout the season. Trez's grandma died, and then we know about Lou, and
yeah.
then so all these things happened, and they couldn't get the job done. They were up by double digits 3 games in a row, and they simply couldn't get the job done. They robbed us. They stripped us of a great Western Conference final. No disrespect to Mike Malone and the Nuggets. They're not the Clippers. And we all had this matchup anticipated and marked on our calendars. It didn't happen. And for that, you know, we got a Laker championship. I thought the Clippers had a great chance of beating them. But hey, you don't know what you don't know, man. At this point, I'm just guessing, right? And the Lakers got the job done, so props to them.
Yes, sir. Let's give another shout out to the Lakers for a 2020 NBA championship. I'm hoping to forget about that soon as a Kings fan. It's all gravy. So moving on, I know that we had a great time in the NBA bubble. We got to see some great games. We got to see some great performances out of players like Jamal Murray and Tyler Hero, a lot of young superstars. So with that being said, do you believe for next season a December 22nd start date is a little too early considering we just kind of ended the bubble?
I think it's early. It's earlier than any of us thought. We were saying Martin Luther King, which was in February, potentially even in January, depending on what the NBA gets information from the doctors all over the country in terms of will they let fans into the arena. So my thing was if they get word that fans would be able to come in, they will extend the season till February, March, even April to save a lot of the money. But obviously, it's not looking like that's going to happen, and it's looking like it's going to be a lot of the same thing, a lot like how the MLB did it with traveling to different stadiums, and same with the NFL, but not really allowing fans. Now the NFL is allowing fans at a small capacity, but MLB didn't. That's the route the NBA will most likely take. So they'll take the money up front, whatever that money is. I'm not sure what the amount was, but that's what it seems like is happening. They're like, well, we need the money. And if we won't have fans, then we got to speed up this process regardless of what the players feel or think. We already saw Danny Green essentially say, nah, I ain't playing. LeBron ain't playing. All these players ain't playing. But the fact of the matter is, he ain't LeBron to talk for him. He's Danny
Yeah.
Green. That's it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I'm pretty torn on it in terms of if you were the Lakers or the Heat and you made a super deep playoff run, made it to the championship, you're going to be only a couple of months removed from the season, and I don't think that's a long enough time to be, taking a break and having a proper off season. But then you also have to consider the guys who haven't been playing in since March, and the players that the young guys like the Trey Youngs and people like that, where even if it wasn't from March or even early NBA exits like Damian Lillard, these are guys that just want to get on the floor and be able to showcase their talent. So I am pretty torn on the topic because at the same time, while I want to give the championship contenders rest, we haven't seen a lot of the guys since March, and that's such a long time. And so I'm worried that we're not going to be able to see a lot of the young talent flourish, but at the same time, they are young. So what's a couple months going to do, especially considering the health concerns? I know what that Dodgers player had tested positive in the eighth inning, and then he's on the field without a mask. So at the end of the day, safety is number one priority, and I think the NBA is going to be able to handle it right. And hopefully, I know they've been talking about the January 18th date. So I guess that's a little bit better in terms of retrospect and seeing, I guess, an extra month of break. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hoping to see it, the NBA as soon as we can.
Shout out to the Dodgers, who again, I'm not a Dodger fan, but they did it for Kobe. Anytime we do something for Kobe, we highlight on the show. So shout out to the
Yeah.
Dodgers. Shout out to the Lakers. It was big time. They brought the championships back to LA. Now let's hope that never happens again. But again, rest in peace, Kobe. You're the man, man. I know you're looking upon us. Also, real quick about the December 22nd too early for the NBA idea is that it's going to force free agency to be earlier now because originally we had free agency on December 1st. Now we could see free agency on November 22nd, 4 days after the NBA draft, which is on November 18th. All the
Crazy.
dates get moved up.
Hmm.
So that could be tough from that perspective and how teams prepare for these type of things and how players prepare. But it's going to be interesting to see though.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just super excited to see more NBA basketball, and
Me
like
too.
just like we mentioned in the previous podcast, there's this balance of powers. So you got duos like KD and Kyrie, one of the best backcourts, and Steph Curry and Clay. So we're definitely going to see when the NBA is going to start. But with that being said, I think especially in today's era, we're able to have things like the NBA bubble. We're able to contact each other through social media, and so that kind of transitions us into the next topic. Michael Jordan, in his this new interview basically said that he doesn't think he would have been able to handle the Twitter era just because everything's so publicized, and he didn't want to, I think especially watching The Last Dance, we got to see Michael Jordan be a little bit more controversial and kind of, open up and show his authentic side. So in your opinion, Leo, do you think Michael Jordan would have been able to handle this social media era?
No, because of how he presented himself in that documentary, like this low key. I love to love myself in the sense I want time to myself. I want to do things that maybe aren't proper in the eyes of the public. And yeah, certain guys wouldn't be able to manage today's social media craze. You see what LeBron does, every step he takes, it's followed, it's reported on. You see it all over Instagram, and he's under this microscope. It's tough. It's if MJ was under that microscope with before social media, everywhere he went, he had millions of fans waiting for him. Now, can you imagine what it would have been like, and how it could have affected his mental health? I know it was originally was it DeRozan who came out with the mental health proposition of making them more aware towards NBA players, not being too machista, right? Like, oh, I'm too manly to talk about this. No, if you have mental health issues, talk about it. And I feel like maybe that wasn't acceptable back then. And now with social media and all these things, it really could affect you on a larger scale. So, yeah, to answer your question, it would have been tough for MJ. Could he have done it? Sure, he's a great player. He's the best ever. But for the other guys, like the Rodmans, I don't know how he would have survived in the social media craze.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so follow-up question would be, I know you mentioned LeBron. Would this help and like improve his GOAT case because he's able to be so successful while being under such a microscope?
Yes, I think it would have helped his case, but I still think he's a ring away from. And I'm not gonna say not entering the conversation. He's definitely in the conversation, but I think if he wins one more, you can argue that he's the GOAT. Like
Yeah.
at 5 championships with 3 different teams, with his greatness, how he's still arguably the best player in the NBA, you can argue he's a GOAT, which is incredible because the amount of money he invests into his body, the time he invests into the game, you have nothing but respect for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think in the particular case I want to cite is just LeBron James, right? I think in this day and age, everyone has access to social media, but it's not about, having access to it. It's about, capitalizing off of it and making the most of it. So I think when it comes to LeBron James and his presence on social media, he's just somebody that, everybody gravitates towards and is super popular. And I think he's been able to adapt well, right? He came into the league in 2003, and let's be honest, social media wasn't like what it was in 2003. So for him to be able to adapt and still reach a young audience, I think a good comparison would be him and Kawhi Leonard, right? Kawhi Leonard is absolutely not on social media. I think I watched one of his YouTube videos with Serge Ibaka where he rarely on social media,
That was
right?
funny.
But he's still able to have somewhat of a brand presence. But if we're going to be honest, it's nothing near LeBron James. So I think for him to be able to be new and innovative in today's NBA, still connect with fans through social media. I know he sends cryptic tweets to his
Yeah,
teammates on social media. So I think that's something that we undermine with LeBron James, but he's just been able to be that monster and that one of the greatest players in the NBA today. So for him to utilize social media and make him kind of more so an advantage than a disadvantage, I think it just goes to show how great of an NBA player he actually is. But with that being said, I think one of the NBA players that use social media quite a lot, to say the least, is Kevin Durant. He's able to respond to a lot of fans and a lot of hate comments. And so I think that transitions us to the next topic. Kevin Durant, coming off an Achilles injury, I know a lot of people are speculating the Nets being one of the better teams in the East. Does this put Kevin Durant on the hot seat, and is it championship or bust for the Nets next season?
yeah. If you guys watched our video on this platform on YouTube and on Instagram TV on Basketball Zone, we came out with a video where I pretty much posed the question like, is this championship or bust for the Nets? And I feel like it is because they are this year's Clipper team. They're stacked with talent, and I could see a letdown like the Clippers did, I can also see them win an NBA championship. It's that drastic of a difference for this Nets team. They're that talented. Karis LeVert going into his zone towards the end of the year, he was already really good. People forget that he was going to be an all-star before he had that gruesome injury. That's what helped D'Lo resurrect his career. People forget that D'Lo was on his third strike in terms of his chances of becoming or living up to that number two pick. And when that happened, people D'Lo was coming off the bench, I believe, and then when Karis LeVert got hurt, that's when he took over and things just settled down and slowed down for him. And if he wasn't coming off the bench, he wasn't playing the same amount of minutes. So definitely that injury helped D'Lo a lot. And then that kind of allowed or that made LeVert take a step back, is what my memory tells me. But when he came back, he still wasn't the same. He's finally healthy. You saw what he could do in the bubble. He's really, really good from top to bottom. His game is complete. He can score on all three levels. He's a good defender, high IQ, big player, 6'6". Could play that small forward position, guard the opposing small forward, shooting guard. Being that versatile is so valuable in today's NBA. So to me, it needs to be a championship for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And I think I kind of want to steer this conversation more towards Kevin Durant and kind of his legacy and where he cements himself in NBA history. So I think, especially post OKC era and what he's done on Golden State, I think it's kind of hard to put him legacy wise with the greats because of the decision he made and
Yeah.
because of the rings that he won. I would have much rather seen him make a Brooklyn decision after his OKC tenure. But at the end of the day, we are here now, and it's gonna be weird seeing what he's gonna be able to do this season in terms of coming off an Achilles injury. And I think I want to give him the benefit of the doubt this season if he's unable to return 100% back to his full form. But at the end of the day, it's Kevin Durant, 6'11", one of the best scorers the NBA has ever seen. And so for me, in terms of legacy wise, it would be great to see him win an NBA championship on his own. Have him be the best player on his own team. I know he left Golden State because he felt like he was never an insider on that team. So at the end of the day, man, I hope KD can really bring something great to that Brooklyn Nets organization. If you guys check out Leo's post on the Brooklyn Nets, he talks about Brooklyn being, kind of like one of the catastrophes of the NBA in terms of, they had high hopes. They were a big marquee team. They were supposed to be winning. And so here they have their marquee players. So if they don't deliver, then when's it going to be their next window of opportunity? So let's see if KD can really cement his legacy in NBA history.
Yeah, and real quick, Kyrie has or will have to do a lot with that. He was a big advocate for them
Hmm.
joining forces in New York, but they chose the Brooklyn Nets over the New York Knicks. So there's an added pressure, especially in that state alone. We're gonna see both teams go at it, not to the same extent as the Lakers and Clippers because the Knicks aren't good, but
Hmm.
you'll still feel that animosity towards the fans and everybody. Really, we like it or not, as a Knicks fan over there. That's still the Lakers of Los Angeles, to some
Yeah.
extent. So that's how I feel about that situation, and we need Kyrie to step up in big moments and help guide and give him the best resources for KD to succeed in Brooklyn. Because without that, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
The NBA is too tough and it's too good.
As long as Kyrie's not feeding him info that the
Yeah,
Earth is flat, I think we're gonna be okay.
yeah.
So with that, going on to the next topic. So I think, especially with Brooklyn, we got to see how a franchise and their front office has been able to mold and create players and attract players to really build their team. And so what we've got to see recently is Daryl Morey signing his 5-year contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, the second winningest general manager in his tenure. And I think he was also second in like most transactions while he was with Houston. And so as much as we like to say that Daryl Morey hasn't been able to get the job done, he's been winning. I know that the Kings kind of have the assistant GM, so I guess we have a baby version of Daryl Morey. And so hopefully we're able to emulate some of that in Sacramento. But at the end of the day, do you think Daryl Morey is the guy to put the Philadelphia 76ers over the hump?
I'll preface it by saying this. I'm shocked that he took the job right away. It tells you a lot of things. It's so telling because I feel like he didn't want to get rid of Chris Paul. He was forced to do it because James Harden and the owner, Fertitta, thought that, the owner thought that was one of the worst contracts ever. And then James just couldn't deal with him anymore. So he was pretty much at a huge disadvantage to make that move. I don't think he wanted to make that move because he's much smarter than that. The day that happened, I remember I was at a wedding and I was like, why on earth would they make this deal? Russell Westbrook, as good as he is, doesn't fit with what the Rockets do. Hey, what happened? We saw exactly that when he returned in the playoffs, when the game slowed down. There was no way he was going to space the floor. He made that team worse. That team lost more games when he came back on. I don't know if people are aware of that. They were up in the series 3-1, I believe. He came back and they went to 7, and they almost lost that game 7. Obviously, it wasn't all his fault, but he was a majority of the reason why they had to change how they play, put him in a dunker spot, and then that just changed things for them, period. That move made no sense. That's what this move means. It was like, no, I had to quit my job in Houston. I took all these risks. I left them pretty much without any assets. That's what he did. He made all these transactions and he just stepped down. He was supposed to come back. The owner wanted him back. He was like, you know what? Nah, I don't like my chances this time. I'm going to take it into a different direction. I thought he'd take a year off, stay with his family, but yeah, I was shocked that the Sixers, not shocked, but shocked in the sense that I just felt like he'd take a break. It was only a matter of time before everybody started calling about him because everybody knows, even though he has a lot of hate throughout the NBA because of all his success, like the dude's made the playoffs 8 years in a row.
Hmm.
So that that tells you a lot. And when they hired him, I was shocked, but I wasn't because he's such a great GM, and I believe he's going to do big things. Now, how well will he get along with the new head coach there? I never liked that dynamic of hiring a head coach first, then a GM. We know how that's gone in Sacramento. But we'll see how it goes in Philadelphia.
Yeah, man. Seeing Philadelphia, I kind of see it as a steal. I don't think anybody really anticipated that. I think a lot of Philadelphia fans were, used to Elton Brand, but seeing Daryl Morey kind of like step over him and be hired in that retrospect,
Hmm.
it's really interesting because just like you mentioned, hiring a GM after the head coach, I know a lot of news NBA media outlets have been talking about when they bring free agents in and you have Doc Rivers, Daryl Morey, and Elton Brand in the room, it's going to be hard for them to turn down an offer. And so I think if there's one guy to really get the job done and put Philadelphia over, it's going to be Daryl Morey. We've got to see Philadelphia, in the process. It's kind of worked thus far, but it's led to early playoff exits. So I'm hoping that Daryl Morey is going to be able to, get some shooters on that roster. I know other news media outlets are mentioning how, Elton Brand's first moves were to sign Al Horford and Tobias Harris to these huge contracts. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those contracts move very soon, especially with the NBA free agent signings being earlier on in the season. But hopefully, we're able to see Daryl Morey make some moves. And in your opinion, do you think he's going to keep the duo together of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid?
I don't think they should, but I think they'll try it one more time. And a little bit to your point about Elton Brand acquiring these players, they're very good players. He just overpaid for them. No one's arguing or upset about the level of talent from these players. I think it's more so, right, these ridiculous contracts that they both got, like ridiculous contracts. But yeah, I do think that um, Daryl Morey will make the best decisions, and I think he's the right guy to not rebuild, but reconstruct that roster, get assets in return, and build more around whichever player he chooses. I feel like both players are very good together, but there are other pieces that would fit better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, and I think Philadelphia's window, that championship window, is with Jimmy Butler. They had an amazing team: Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, you name it, to go play alongside Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. So,
Yeah.
the 76ers have fared, quite differently than what we expected, but we'll see if they're going to be able to get into championship contention again.
Yeah, Marvin Morris says Philly said they need Buddy so bad. What would you take for Buddy? Go ahead, Ty.
Man, I know a lot of Kings fans have been talking about Tybull, right? They love the young guy. I was able to watch some of his. Hold on, my audio's cutting out real quick. All right, cool. But anyways, yeah, I think a lot of Kings fans like the Tybull guy. I know a lot of Kings fans been talking about Tybull, Horford in a first rounder, but I don't know if that makes us that much better. You know what I mean? Having a slow big take minutes away from the young guys on top of Tybull, which I don't know what's his ceiling really. He's long, he's lanky, he's a good defender, but is he really gonna push us into playoff contention? I don't know. Um, Zaire Smith, maybe, but for me, I don't know if Philadelphia is willing to give up what we want for him. Even if they were to throw in a Josh Richardson for Buddy Hield, so we'd have a shooting guard, I guess that helps us out in the short term. But in the long term, I think the Kings' plans are a little blurry right now, considering we're going to have to give Fox the max extension very soon. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is there any compensation we can get that's worth Buddy Hield?
The only conversation that I would take is if I get a top 6 pick in return for Buddy. Obviously, not straight up for him. You still need to give him more value from the Kings side of things. But if there's a deal that surrounds Buddy Hield, other ancillary pieces for a top 6 pick, even that Golden State pick, or if it's say it's not Buddy, say they want like Zach Lowe was proposing, Rashawn Holmes, Bielitsa, a future top 5 or top 3 pick for the Kings, for the number 2 pick, you'd have to think about that because that number 2 pick, if you do decide to move on from Buddy Hield, could be Anthony Edwards, right? Or it could be LaMelo Ball, and then you have this lineup that you should, or this duo that you should have had with Luca and Fox. Now you would have it with LaMelo and Fox. So it's interesting for sure because if they ever do get the number 2 pick and Wiseman's there, that would be such a Kings thing to do. As much as I like Wiseman to draft a big, no, you would have to draft either LaMelo or Anthony Edwards or even Danny Advia at that point. And I know a lot of people, again, a lot of people didn't like Luca. Like, nah, he's too high for number 2, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can go back and I have a bunch of screenshots from fans all over Facebook. No, no, that's too high, blah, blah, blah. No, Denny Advia is going to be a stud, and all these teams that'll pass up on him will regret it. The Golden State Warriors just worked him out. They fell in love with him. They were highly impressed by Denny. News just came out. So don't be surprised if Denny is the guy. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. To me, it wouldn't be. To a lot of people, to the casuals, it would be a surprise. This again, European, the white Euro stigma that comes with all these guys coming into the league. But yeah, if there's a deal that can get you a top 6 pick, if that's the Hawks wanting to move out and just getting a good player to combine with what they already have with Trae Young, then I think that makes sense too. Obviously, not straight up, but a deal that can formulate to get that done.
Yeah, I think we're just in such a weird position because considering Buddy Hield's value and especially, his trade value around the league, he's one of the best shooters. And I think that's something we can't undermine. But we've talked about it before, how Luke Walton wanted to transition Buddy Hield from a shooter to more like a playmaker. It kind of like hindered his game and he wasn't able to focus on the things that he was really good at. So ideally, when you put Buddy Hield's name on the Kings roster, he fits, right? But in terms of the system and what Luke Walton has implemented, would we have seen something different in Dave Yeager's system? I don't know. We got to see, Dave Yeager and Buddy Hield go back and forth in the middle of a game when Buddy Hield's shooting long threes. So I don't know if that would have been the resolution either, but at the end of the day, sometimes a name doesn't always make its value. And so with that being said,
Buddy
I think
respected Dave though. He didn't
yeah,
necessarily like him, but he definitely respected him. And I think,
yeah.
I believe that's something that you should take note of for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It was it was a professional relationship.
Yeah.
They both went to work and got and did what they needed to do. But I think with that being said, a more fun topic, the NBA 2K ratings just came out. Shout out to my boy Jimmy Butler finally being a 93 overall. Put some
93.
respect on the man's name. So I think I'm just gonna throw at you, Leo, the top 10 NBA 2K21 ratings, and let me know your thoughts. And
So I'll say
obviously,
overrated or underrated, right?
okay, sounds good. So LeBron James at a 98 overall, the best player in the game. What are your thoughts?
Fair.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right, Giannis at number 2, 97 overall.
Fair.
Fair. Okay. Kawhi Leonard at 3 as a 96 overall.
Fair.
James Harden at 4, 96 overall as well.
Overrated.
Yeah, I think 96 is a little high for him
He's like a
considering his early
94.
playoff exit. Kevin Durant at 95 as the 5th best player.
Oof. I think he's like a 93 because of the injury.
Yeah, I agree. I think after the first update, and seeing how he plays, it can definitely fluctuate in that retrospect. Um, at number 6, Anthony Davis with the same overall 95.
Oh, maybe underrated, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. He did play really well in the finals, though, so we could definitely see that going up. Number 7, also 95, is Damian Lillard.
I want to say he should be higher, but that's fair.
Yeah, it's hard because
Yeah.
Damian Lillard's like an undersized guard, but he
Yeah.
just scores spontaneously, so it's just insane. Also at 95, at number 8 we have Steph Curry,
95?
95.
That's fair. That's fair. He'll be
Coming
higher
in hand
when
in
the season
3,
starts.
yeah. At number 9, Luka Doncic at a 94 overall.
That's fair. That's fair. He'll be a lot higher too, but that's fair for a preseason type thing.
Yeah, and then rounding it out, my guy Jimmy Butler at a 93 overall.
I think that's recency bias. He's not a 93 player. He's definitely a 90 type player. 80,
Yeah.
80 I'll say 90 for sure. He's top 10 player. 93 is he did some heroic shit in the finals, so we're going to give him a 93. But definitely he's a hell of a fucking player. Make no mistake about it.
So Paul George recently made some comments with his, I think, 88 overall rating. What are your thoughts
That was
on?
Jimmy, right? They like swapped.
Yeah.
That's why he's upset. Hey, buddy, how about you just start playing your game? You're more talented than Jimmy Butler, believe it or not. You were a better player to me than Jimmy Butler before these playoff bubble games. Step up, play your game, and everything else will take care of itself. That's it.
Yeah, I think especially considering his bubble performance, like I don't think this is the time for you to like have
Yeah.
any chatter about your NBA 2K rating. Like you
No.
definitely underperformed. So I'm completely on the same boat as you. PG is such a smooth basketball player. You love seeing him play, but at the same time, like you got to put the ball in the basket, man. No more side backward shots. So. With that being said, transitioning to the next topic, I know a lot of teams have been thinking about making moves this offseason, particularly the Miami Heat and Dallas Mavericks have been public about making their rosters available, except for their untouchables. So with Dallas, it's Kristaps Porzingis and Doncic. With the Heat, it's going to be Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Would you be willing to deal some of your young guys or the rest of your roster to get a third star, potentially even like a Bradley Beal to put the team over?
I would trade KP to the Bucks, and if I could get Giannis right now, before next year, because next year it'll be even tougher. We all know Miami will be ready to lock and load that deal, and other teams as well that'll be in the hunt. But if you're the Mavericks, I'm calling right now and saying, what can we do to get Giannis over here now? Get him a year of cohesion with Luka and Giannis, and just see where that takes you. But Porzingis is on the table if you're the Bucks, and you're like, well, I'd get Porzingis for the long run. I know I'm going to lose Giannis. Why not take an all-star back in return? That'll probably be the most value I get in terms of a trade. Or I could just lose Giannis for nothing. Those are all things you got to think about if you're the Bucks, because there's no guarantee that he comes back unless they spend an insane amount of money and they make the finals, which we all know the Nets are looming. Other teams are getting better. They have to make some crazy deals to even get to the finals. I think they'll be in a hunt like every year because Giannis is so great, but they need to make some noise and make it to the finals if they want to go that route and just risk it all and say whatever, we'll just let life take care of itself, and if we lose them, we lose them. But if you're a smart GM and you're thinking about the future, why not get KP and future assets, future draft picks in return? I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting seeing KP in a Milwaukee uniform, and who knows what
Who
he'll be
knows? The
able to
damn
do.
Kings might come in and just steal Giannis.
Yeah,
Yeah, what a
that,
joke of a report.
yeah, that was crazy. I saw that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I think just for me though, I think Dallas wants to pair, Luca and KP with Giannis. So I think if anything, they'd rather wait until the offseason to acquire Giannis. But I think I kind of wanted to talk about Miami, and I know they kind of are in that championship contention realm, making it coming off an NBA Finals appearance. We got to see a lot of their young guys step up. Would you be willing to deal like a Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson for a third star like Bradley Beal if you're the Miami Heat?
Yes. That would put them over the top, and that would solidify their position as the best team in the East. Now, will it win the championship? That's a whole separate conversation because the West is tough, and even the East. The East, again, people disrespect the East. The East is top heavy. The East has a lot of good teams in the top, like top five, top six. After that is it's a what show. But the first for sure five teams, they're good basketball teams. And we can argue they're better than the first five in the West. The West is just loaded from top to bottom. They have more balance. But the East is very top heavy.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And I think, when you look at the Miami Heat in particular, although I'm a huge Tyler Hero fan, and I think that he definitely blossomed and evolved in the NBA bubble. I think if you have the opportunity to get a third star like Bradley Beal, I'm completely on the same boat as you. You got to pull the trigger. And I think something similar would kind of be to the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Giving up technically their whole future for a guy like Anthony Davis. Is Bradley Beal Anthony Davis? No. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you have to have that mentality where it's win now. I think, especially Pat Riley's perspective, I can definitely see him pulling the trigger and, making a big move to make sure that his team is sustainable and going to be able to make another finals appearance. But for me, I'm definitely willing to trade Tyler Hero or any young asset to, acquire a third star that could potentially put the Miami Heat over.
So you'd go Hero, Duncan, and pieces that fit contract situations?
Probably, and probably like another first rounder, maybe potentially even Kendrick Nunn. But I'm not mad at the Goran Dragic, Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, Bam starting lineup. I think that's pretty lethal.
And oh, that's Letho's egg. And also something that I don't know how it would work because I'm not a cap expert, but Bertans is arguably a top five shooter as well. Can they find a way to put that guy in that deal? Then you just essentially replace Duncan with Bertans, and then you
Yeah.
replace Beal with Hero. So that would be lethal, and that would really, really put the Heat over the top.
And like imagine, if they're able to unload that Iguodala contract, maybe if Gallinari is willing to take a pay cut,
Facts.
sneak Gallinari in as a six man, that's insane, man. That's
That's a crazy
crazy.
team.
So I know you were mentioning the East. So just like you said, East is very top heavy. They have a lot of big teams at the very top of the standings. So with that being said, the Indiana Pacers been in the news a lot. Victor Oladipo, is he staying? Is he leaving? Gordon Hayward, is he accepting or declining that $34 million player option? What are your thoughts on those two players? And do you think either of those can really help out Indiana?
Oof, I would love Hayward on the Kings, honestly. And I've talked about this on the previous podcast. I think that was solo, but I think that deal for Buddy could make sense to Boston, right? They'd get their elite shooter. The Kings would get a very good player who can do it all on both sides of the floor. Not as good of a shooter, but can do different things. Secondary playmaker to a De'Aaron Fox, which they need. I would really like that piece. But to answer your question about Depot and Hayward, I don't think he would make sense on the Celtics. Um, I think Depot needs to go somewhere else, but Hayward would make sense on the Pacers. So I don't know if they would facilitate a third team to try and get someone else that fits better for the Celtics, but the Celtics hang up and then the Pacers are calling. That's how I see that potential deal going. I would like to see Hayward on a different team this year, It's time. Like he tried it from the from the first half, right, where he got hurt, his first game with the Celtics. It's been an uphill battle ever since. So definitely, I would like for him to go to a different team. That'd be the Kings, the Pacers, or anybody else.
Yeah, I think if you're an Indiana fan, you're kind of in a weird position. Firing your head coach, another early playoff exit. Is T.J. Warren someone that you can really see leading your roster, even though he
Hell
had
nah.
a nice string of games? And then you look at Oladipo, and I guess you can put him kind of in that All Star category. I think he's won what, one or two, something like that. But is he the guy to really put your team over? I don't know. We got to see him come back in the NBA bubble. He wasn't performing, considering he was coming off an injury.
Their best
He
player is
wasn't able.
Sabonis. Make no mistake
Yeah,
about it. The Pacers' best player is Sabonis, and he got
yeah,
injured during the bubble. I think they're in a good spot. They got Malcolm out there as well, a nice ancillary piece, not the piece, but T.J. Warren, as you said, hell no, you're not building around him. I don't care what anybody says. He had a nice little string of games, but he's not that guy. He's an ancillary piece. That's what he does. He feeds off of the other better players. That's what he should pride himself on. It. That's not a bad thing. So I don't want people to take this out of context. Like, oh, Leo's saying he sucks. No, he's a good player, but he's not the player. And Oladipo, if they can get a Hayward, and now you got Sabonis, Hayward, Warren, and Malcolm, that's a pretty good four. What would you call that? A four trio or a quadruple trio?
yeah.
I don't know, but like four really good players.
Would you say that them acquiring Hayward and replacing Oladipo would make them better?
Yes, it would make them better because they now have legit wings that could play on both ends of the floor. Even though before this season, we didn't think TJ Warren was any good on defense, but being in the better system under McMillan, who demands you to play extremely hard, now he won't be there anymore. But they still got the Raptors assistant coach, who is coming from arguably the best organization in basketball. I think he'll demand the same type of respect. And if TJ continues to buy in, they got two guys who can be good on both sides of the floor, in Hayward and in Warren.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I think for me, it's just hard as a middle tier team to you want to swap your best player, but at the same time, when you're in a conference with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's hard, trying to put your team in that
Yep.
championship contention. We definitely talked on this podcast about Miles Turner and his performance, and so it's kind of
That's
like if
another
you're
guy. You're paying him $18 million to be a star. My
yeah.
gosh, is he so far away from that?
Yeah, so I think it's very fun to entertain, potential transactions and things like that. But if we're being honest, I think especially being a Kings fan, I can definitely relate where it's just like, we talk about these hypothetical trades and acquisitions, but until we can really put together some consistency and make some deep playoff runs, like Indiana, it's going to be hard to talk about, whether or not, these middle tier players can be your best player on an NBA championship contender team. But with that being said, I know you mentioned they were able to hire the Raptors assistant GM. In your opinion, what has been the best coaching hire this offseason?
That's tough. I think there's been a lot of moving pieces. I'm not the biggest Ty Lue fan, but I do respect him, and I like that move. Obviously, Doc. I've always liked Doc. I do think he's a tad overrated in that respect. I think the Patriots got the best coach.
Really?
Yeah, the fact that he's been under such a great young mind in Toronto under Coach Nurse, then I think he can bring that same type of mentality, that same type of expectations from an organization. I was talking to E-Man about this, that that LeBron show, I think on ESPN. Uh, what's I don't know what it's called, but
Interrupted, right? Is that what it's called? Something like that?
something like that, or it's his ESPN Plus show. If it's a KD, or it's a KD one on ESPN Plus. I forget which one it was, but it was like Gronk, and they have all these super athletes on there, and they talk about mental fortitude, which could be a nice segue to preface the interview with Rashawn Holmes tomorrow. or today, if you haven't listened to it already on audio, it's how NBA players or just NFL players, how they act when they play for a certain organization. So when you think of the best organizations in basketball, what do you think of? The Heat, right? The Spurs,
You know?
the Raptors, teams that demand the most. So if a Kevin Hart goes into a locker room, if he went to the Kings locker room, everybody say hi to him, like, "Oh, what's up?" No, if he goes into the Heat locker room, guess what? Everyone is locked in. Where Kevin Hart would be afraid to say hi to anybody because he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like these guys are so locked in, they don't even know who I am." That's the type of respect that you should demand from your teammates, from your entire organization, from top to bottom, from coaches to players. Being locked in is so difficult. If it was that easy, everybody would be good. Problem is, some players in the NBA simply can't lock in that type of way. Everybody talks about it, right? It's so cliche. Oh, I gotta lock in. It's so effing hard to lock in, and that starts from years and years. And the Heat have demanded that. They have built that reputation, and I'm using the Heat as the main analogy, or the Patriots, right? How the Bucks now, if you go into a Bucks locker room, they brought over the leader in Tom Brady. That team is legit, and I think Gronkowski talked about that. How the Patriots had this aura about them. There are so few in between organizations who have that aura of respect and being locked in and keeping yourself accountable. That's such a big difference from a team like the Kings. As much as I hate to say it, they're not the same, and it's going to take years to develop that type of reputation. And it's not just developing the reputation and people thinking that you're that team, it's more so being that team. And you'll see the difference if they ever become that team. You'll see a team that plays hard every single night. You'll see a team that's locked in defensively and doesn't have as many mental lapses as the Kings do. Those are type of things that you go in and you're watching film consistently. As I was telling Rashawn Holmes, it's a testament to his defensive greatness that he was able to not bite on Donovan Mitchell's pump fake uh, with the game on the line when they beat the Jazz, and he just guarded him to perfection. That's him watching a ton of hours of film, knowing the tendencies of a Donovan Mitchell, and for him not to have those urges to jump like a lot of the Kings players do to bite on those pump fakes, because with 30 seconds left, you know what they want to do. They want to pump fake going into you and then let the refs decide the game. He said, no, I'm going to stay down. I'm going to stay disciplined in my defense. And that's what great defenders, and just for purposes of this segment, that's the greatness of the players who can predict and anticipate every move. It's most players will know your first two moves, but then when it comes down to move 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they won't know what to do. And that's a testament to just the greatness of these organizations and what they demand out of their players. And unfortunately, it's not the Kings. And I think the Raptors are one of those teams now. And I think that's a major reason why the Pacers got to steal.
Yeah, I definitely see your perspective on that. I think I definitely undermined, that Raptors organization and, being able to, acquire a piece of that organization in a sense by, being able to hire a coach that came from that organization. For me, I think the two that come to mind is Doc Rivers and Ty Lue. I'm kind of on the same boat with you in terms of the Ty Lue situation. Like, he's definitely been able to win a championship in Cleveland. However, will he be able to put the Clippers over? I don't know, and I hope so. I hope that we can see a Toronto Kawhi again, and then we'll definitely see if PG ends up getting traded or not. But I think that's definitely something to look into. But me personally, I think just like you, I feel like Doc Rivers is overrated, but I think they've been sitting with Brett Brown, and so I think Doc Rivers is a huge upgrade,
Yeah.
and especially with his history in the NBA, right? And so for me, just like I mentioned earlier, him, Daryl Morey, and Elton Brand being in the room, being able to recruit players and things like that, I think that speaks wonders. And I hope Doc Rivers is able to cement that hard working work ethic into Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, so that we can see these guys turn into the player that we hope to see them be. He wasn't as successful with the Clippers, and so he wasn't able to really maintain that with Kawhi and PG. So hopefully, even though his track record doesn't show know that he's been all that great with big superstar all stars. I hope Doc Rivers can really get the job done in Philadelphia.
Without question, Doc Rivers is a huge upgrade over Brown. Like when you think about it, just laying back and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a huge upgrade. But again, if they ever get to that moment again where they're playing the Raptors and say a Kawhi Leonard type player, he needs to be better in crunch time. He needs to make better adjustments. He got out coached by Malone in 3 straight games down the stretch. Those are things he can't take for granted. He can't say, well, PG missed all these crazy shots on the side of the backboard or start blaming players. Rather, if you're such a great coach, take accountability for it, learn from it, apply what you learned, and just get better. The Sixers have the talent to get better right away. He's a good coach. He's a better coach than Brown. So I do expect him to be better because he will demand his players to play hard every single night. All these reports surfacing about him essentially not holding Kawhi accountable. That's like I said last show. I thought that was surprising to me. But if that's the case, he needs to make amends for it and keep his current players, and especially Joel Embiid, accountable. But I think that's going to do it, y'all. I know you have to leave very soon, about in 2 minutes. We've talked about this for about 51 minutes now. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. It was fun, bro. Definitely tune in to the Rashawn Holmes video podcast tomorrow at noon. It's already available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcast right now. So you can kind of get a sneak peek or a preview of what we talked about. Obviously, it's going to be better when you watch the video because it's a film breakdown. So you want to see what we're seeing. But definitely highly recommend you guys to drop a review. We're being a lot more consistent with a lot of draft talk in the upcoming weeks. Definitely with November 18th looming around, we're going to break down these prospects for sure. And we would appreciate if you guys can drop a review on iTunes, like this video, dislike it, whatever. Just drop a comment. Help the algorithms move the videos to other people that can reach and potentially become a fan of the show. Anything else you'd like to add, bro, before we end the show?
No, man. I'm just gonna say this right now. Brooklyn Nets 2021, baby.
Okay, I see you, man. I see you. So on behalf of the entire CK family, thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.